Hi, I'm Satyam Verma. I'm the team lead for the RFP Response, and today our objective was to understand how might we resolve nefarious contract clauses at the point of RFP response in ways that go beyond auto recognition to create actionable response strategies so that all project delivery stakeholders can align around shared goals and success metrics. And through our group discussion, we identified a number of shared pains that come along with these issues.
Today, the current state is pretty straightforward and it's really it might be too simple. And so we had to narrow it down into a box, right? So we're taking a look at a design build moving into a CM at risk contract with a 10-story office space being converted to residential, 150,000 square feet, and with a private development owner in both union and non-union. And we even gave it a location in Baltimore, Maryland, so that we could really narrow down exactly what type of scenario that we were looking at so that we can understand how do we get to the outcomes that we want. Today, there's a couple of different stages in the current state, right? It's usually just your project owner that is putting out a contract, and then the design firm and general contractors are part of the signing the prime contract. And what we've realized is one of the main shared pains that came out of that is the fact that our trade contractors are not actually involved in that prime contract negotiation in the way that it gets actually built. And that leaves them out of the loop. And that puts a lot of risk on them, especially when we think about the indemnity protections that do or a lot of times do not come with that. And so one of the main contract clauses that we decided we want to address was indemnity, so that we can figure out a way that might be helpful to get trade contractors involved in the initial prime contract negotiation, or at least in that RFP phase, as well as understanding that everyone needs to look at the same level of documents, right? We realize that there's a lack of standardization and framework for design build projects, right? A design firm might be looking at, DD sets, your GCs making their assumptions based on a 35% CDs, and trade contractors aren't even getting anything until they're getting that final CD document. And so being able to take the design responsibility clauses and narrow that down more effectively so that we can actually create a standardized framework for how we are evaluating these documents. And lastly is really understanding something that can affect multiple different levels of this, and these are unforeseen conditions, and how that's going to make an impact on giving all stakeholders an actual skin in the game for what the outcomes are going to be at the end.
Did you consider IPD in the process?
That was a great question. That actually was how we kicked off the discussion. And the conclusion we came to was we really only believe that IPDs were used for mega projects, and it's not happening very often. And actually, we had some opinions that we're actually seeing a decline in the number of IPD projects. And so we wanted to address a contract vehicle that was actually used actively and used across multiple different types of projects, not just mega projects where we saw IPD really coming into play. So that's why we decided not to do IPD.
Did you talk about other contract types?
We certainly did. And again, right, as we got into those conversations, we realized that with each one of those, the scope continued to expand. And so we really needed to narrow it down into one use case that we could map out what that flow was and then understand how to get to our future state. Because, right, there's a different scenario for each one of those contract vehicles, and eventually, hopefully, we can address all of them. But as a group, we decided to stick with just one vehicle right now.
So we decided to take a look at design or CM at risk contracts moving to design builds. It's a process that does not give everyone access to the data that they need. And so when we thought about the different levels of pain that come into that, we narrowed it down to 3 different areas of a contract that we can make an impact on to increase the outcomes that we actually see. Design responsibility, indemnification, and unforeseen conditions are 3 areas that can allow everyone to get more skin in the game, allow trade contractors to have a greater understanding and more involvement at the RFP phase, and giving people leverage to see long-term outcomes. And with that, we're going to understand and dive deeper into, in our next state, understanding how we get to our future state and where we can continue to see improvements.
All right, I'm taking a page from Alice's book, and I'm going to let the experts do the speaking here, but I wanted to take a quick moment to just bring up the fact collaboration over the past couple of days has been really great, and I think that's what allows us to have the conversation that we're doing, and everyone has to be willing to contribute. And that's something that I saw in spades, and it's something that you don't often see. And so I personally appreciate it. And I think all the outcomes that we're seeing through these conversations are a direct result of everyone openly collaborating. So thank you all for doing that. Seriously, it deserves a round of applause. Getting into our objective, right? We had some slight changes. We kind of changed the scope, but I think it got to a place that allows us to really create an impactful process. So we wanted to understand, analyze, and deliver a way that how might we create a dynamic contract framework at the point of RFP response in ways that incentivize collaboration so that all project delivery stakeholders are aligned around shared goals and success metrics. And so with that, again, we had a super collaborative group, and Jackson lives this and feels this every day. So I'm gonna let him really get into the weeds of where we started and where we ended up.
My name is Jackson Hoggard. I was in the RFP Response group, and today we helped to uncover a lot of known truths but not talked about truths. We were able to bring out to the forefront the inherent flaws with our traditional contracting structure, even in its most progressive form, and get down to some root causes that really, weren't necessarily easy to get to, but they're easy to talk about. So you see that one thing that I think was key for us was realizing that nefarious is something that has bad intent. So if you read in nefarious, it's wicked or criminal. So looking at the stats of our industry, it's not necessarily criminal, but it is wicked, right? So we wanted to eliminate that so we could create a more collaborative mindset coming into the strategy, but our industry is wicked in many ways, not necessarily intentionally. So we live that, we've seen that, and so here's how we've kind of approached discovering that and trying to provide a solution that can make all this happen. So another thing to think about in our industry is $300 to $700 billion are wasted every year, right? McKinsey did this study of $1.1 trillion a couple years ago. Like $300 to $700 billion are wasted. We all know that if we can capture that, we can all increase profit, but we don't like to talk about profit openly because we just think that that's proprietary. But at the root of it, we're all in business to make profit, and we should be taking profit to put it for people. So how might we create a dynamic contract framework at the point of RFP response in ways that incentivize collaboration so that all project delivery stakeholders are aligned around shared goals and success metrics? Well, starting with why are we building? So why does the builder come, or the owner come to build something? It typically comes down to people out here and in the built environment, they're creating something for somebody else. So that's why the owner is building. So we start with their why, and we've got to bring it through the value chain to help align all stakeholders on why are we building something. So where we started was in the current state, a lot of times you go to owner puts out an RFP, you get to the prime contract, then you scale the risk down. So you have a contract that is just meant as a risk mitigation strategy. It's not really designed to deliver value. So in our current state, it's all about risk management. It's not really designed to deliver value. So what we realized in the future state was that we've got to bring perspectives like the trade contractors, the builders, the boots on the ground earlier into the process so that they can help deliver value and align around the why the owner's coming to the built environment. But how do you get 40 trade contractors involved here? Well, we don't have money to pay for their perspective. We want free con. We want all of this. So, hey, I got a project due next week. Here's a bid on Friday. I need it on Monday. Well, you're going to get bad data when you're expecting a business that's got 40 employees and one person who can give you that data. You're not going to get good data. So we've got to move from a reactive process to aligning around a proactive process. So what we came to in our current state, our main shared pain was we have a low-cost driven environment that creates short-term value and extracts short-term profit. So we need to get aligned around why we're here, which is we're all in it for profit and we're all in it for our people. So let's flip that and let's get to, instead of reactively delivering short-term value, let's proactively design and develop long-term value with the profits that are already existing in that wasteful system. So what do we want to deliver? A dynamic contract framework by the owner where in Excel. So let's start simple. Let's start with something that trade contractors can use, because we know if they have an ERP, they have a sophisticated system, they can do all these things, but they're not there. So let's keep it simple, and let's do it at the RFQ or even at the RFP. Let's start there. So that is how they can start incentivizing collaboration. The dynamic contract framework works on foreseeing conditions, because we all know unforeseen conditions exist on every project, but our contract structure takes it from the owner knows there's unforeseen conditions, and they put it down to the trade contractors to handle and manage their issues. Like, they're not spending time to foresee the conditions. So the other thing we need to deliver for the trade contractors is a contract that can help them to provide mitigation solutions earlier on in the value chain, so that they can execute better and reduce their buried and hidden costs. So I think it's really important to understand we have people and business owners across the country that are craft workers. They come up, they're not business owners, they learn their trade, and then they're really good at it, and now, hey, you own a business. That's what happened to my family. My family business is like, my dad was a really good window restoration guy. Hey, well, now he's a business owner, and he's managing a business of 47 employees. Well, the owner is designing risk to transfer down to the craft worker who owns a business. So what happens is you have a general contracting scheme that then turns into, in this instance, we were talking about an electrical contractor. So the electrical contractor, who is a builder, technical builder, is actually second-tier general contractor for, in this instance, a low-voltage scope. Well, that low-voltage company is now contracted to the electrical contractor, who's contracted to the GC, who's contracted to the owner. So then you go to the next tier on how this happens. They go to their sub-tier, then that sub-tier goes to a 1099. So the 1099 employees are making $25 an hour. Sub-tier 1's charging $45 an hour. The low-voltage contractor's charging $75 an hour. The electrical contractor then charges $125. The GC then sells that to the owner at $150 an hour. So why?
Money.
Right. So creating a dynamic framework that can allow us to show why we're in it, right? People come to work to make money so they can live. But right here, the people, the boots on the ground, they're doing the most. They're on the job site 60 hours a week. But the risk mitigation strategy that our contracts deliver or require is a wicked system, because look at all that waste. That person's taking home $15 an hour, right? So it's a risk mitigation strategy that drives a wicked system. So if we know that there's $300 to $700 billion in our industry, how do we get that money recaptured? Well, you have to incentivize people to show up to the job site. And we can do all these things, we can have all these strategies, we can have all this tech, but if we don't have an environment where people can come to work safe, they can go home, they can do the things at this level, we're building on top of a foundation that's going to crumble. So, So how do we do that? Well, it has to start with changing the way that we contract. We have to change create a collaborative contracting structure that identifies understood shared risk and can create trust on the job site and in the all stakeholder environment to increase trust on the job environment. And then that will ultimately decrease the need for indemnity protection, because we're being transparent, we're increasing trust, and we're coming together to work at solving all of these pains that exist. And if you look at it, if we're talking about why we're in it, which is profit for people, and there's $300 to $700 billion in our industry, there's enough for us to all go around. So,
Wow.
Any questions?
Round of applause. Great finish. That is a tough topic, and you guys made a lot of headway on a very tough topic. That's awesome. Thoughts, questions, comments from the group? Man, you covered it all.
He nailed it.
That was awesome. I mean, that's. I mean, sustainability is a great example, because the sustainability thing, what are we going to do? Skanska has a commitment, and they say we're going to build sustainability, and then all of a sudden, building transparency, and Stacy Smedley comes out of that. And so, in Skanska, credit to Skanska. Like, it does take owners, which in your case, Skanska was the owner saying we're going to do this for our own projects. But yeah, it does take those at the top to realize. But the way you just sold that, like the faster we can 30-second elevator pitch that information up, because we don't know what we don't know, and we make decisions based on, well, that's just the way we've always done it. And the more we can expose that hypocrisy or corruption or whatever, the more we can solve it.
So one of the things that came out is we've got to start adding in capacity planning to make sure that our trades and the sub-tiers can understand what their capacity is, back to the forecasting. So if they're forecasting their capacity, they have the tool to look not just a week ahead, a month ahead, but 6 months ahead. Well, that's what we're really buying in the industry right now, is we're buying worker capacity. So we are buying people to get to the job site. And I don't know how many of you guys have tried to enforce this kind of contract structure, but as a superintendent, I could have a sub dead to rights. I could sit there and say, you need to be here next Tuesday, or I'm going to supplement you. We all know that they can get there. They're still not going to show up. They don't have the people. The industry doesn't support them getting to the job site. So we're in this lose-lose situation. So, historically where we're at is like somebody has to lose in this contracting structure, when in reality, it could be a win-win-win. So challenging how you look at profitability and how we make money as an industry is where it starts.
Awesome. DJ?
Hey, it's a comment, and Nathan, I think it's good feedback for some of these other ones. I love the five W's, the who, what, where, when, why, because it really, I could look just at that and really understand everything else that's going on, because you've identified the different personas and the stakeholders, and you've put the reasons why you're proposing this solution.
I was thinking about that too. Yeah,
I like that a lot.
I wrote it in the program as instructions, but I wasn't quite sure how well we do it. Kudos to you guys for taking that. I think that was helpful. We'll make that a requirement for all the teams next time.
It starts here and goes out from there.
Awesome. Great job. Round of applause.
Round of applause.